Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the UPstanders podcast. This is Dr. O here, and I am so honored and so just excited to have this incredible guest here. I call him my brother from another mother and Mister. But before we get into that, I want y'all to learn a little bit more about him. I know, like, the world knows, but I got to give respect to my brother here. Kane is an award-winning journalist, writer, radio host, and political commentator. A graduate of Rutgers University with a degree in African American Studies, his work on race, culture, and politics have appeared in national publications including The Washington Post, CNN, and The Griot. He is the director of the original BET documentary, Holler, If You Hear Me, Black and Gay in the Church, which was screened at the Obama White House. In 2017, The Kane Show launched on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 126. The Grift is his second book, his first being Live Through This, Surviving the Intersections of Sexuality, God, and Race. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my brother, Mr. Kane. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Back again, as I say on the radio. It's really great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I really appreciate and value your work so much. You know, you come on Sirius XM on the Kane Show every every Tuesday, and you bring so much to the conversation. And I'm just always happy when we can, work together and collaborate and all that good stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. And congratulations on over 1,600 shows, man. That's just
Yeah, isn't that crazy? 1,600 episodes on radio. It's just it's phenomenal, and it's changed my life. And it's every minute. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful.
Well, we're grateful for you. And, I was so honored when you came and visited us at American University when you put out the book. And one of the things I asked you in the interview, I was telling you how I teach a class on Jay-Z and I teach several classes on hip hop. And my question is always, that I always say to students, is that the why and the how of hip hop is more important than the what and the who. We know the names, we know what it sounds like, but why is hip hop and how is hip hop is more important. So I want to start off with that question for you. Why is Kane? And how did this brother get to be the brother that we know today?
Hmm. I think because no was never the end. It
Mm,
was always a spark.
wow.
I think for me, bringing my tribe with me wherever I went,
Mm-hmm.
for me, having someone pass me the baton, then I pass the baton to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've been able to have some dreams come true in my career. Uh, Storytelling is rebellion.
Wow.
Truth telling is an act of not just resistance, but opposition.
Right.
And as I always quote from James Baldwin, you have to go the way your blood beats. I like to sometimes say, you have to go the way your blood boils.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Mm-hmm.
think of it as a boil, when you go from a simmer to a boil,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the way that I look at it. Um, I think that we don't just take a seat at the table, we flip the table over and we rebuild it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That we have to be careful being in Master's house rearranging the furniture, as Laurie Daniel Favor says.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, so I'm all these things because I believe in my tribe. I believe in rewriting the rules. I believe that no isn't the end. And one of my favorite quotes is from Whitney Houston
Mm-hmm.
when she said, she talked about MTV having to put her video "Saving All My Love for You" on air because they weren't playing black artists like that.
Right.
And she said that song was so big. She said they had no choice. I love it when they have no choice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at a certain point, when you're doing the work that you're doing and you love it, and you're worried about the gatekeepers and who's going to say yes and who's going to say no, but I love it when they have no choice.
That's right.
When
That's right.
I or we have the autonomy over the quote unquote gatekeepers or who's going to say yes. So
Absolutely.
that's how I've really kept my focus and my passions clear, and just realizing that no was never the end. And I've been told no a lot, and I've been told this wasn't going to happen. There's no way this is going to happen. So I just always felt like if I stayed on my path, if I went the way my blood boiled,
Hmm.
then what I deserved would happen. And I'm still working very, very hard. Like I'm not this, I mean, you know how this stuff is. It's ongoing,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
never ending. And as the country changes and shifts, so do you. So
Hmm.
so yeah, no was never the end. And that's the way that I see it. That's when but also the tribe,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tribe, the tribe.
Sort of like Suzanne DePass said of Motown, to make know your vitamin. Like every time you hear that
Yeah,
note, it just
absolutely.
fortifies you. Now, do you feel like you were somebody who was always like this? I mean, going back to the teenage days, was it always raised in, political thought and understanding how to do work for the people? Was there an evolution? Was there a moment that led you down this path?
When I was younger, I wasn't into politics at all. I was really disconnected, whether I was living in Washington State or in Philadelphia. I grew up really, really poor, born and raised on welfare. So as I got into my teens, I just became more and more angry with the system.
Hmm.
So politically, no. But I was really, growing up in Philadelphia, I was really motivated by black radicalism, and I mean that word in a good way.
Yeah.
I remember Huey Newton having a big impact on me, Angela Davis having a big impact on me, a name a lot of folks may not know, George Jackson, having a big impact on me. So there was this these people who were just speaking to me in a way that no one ever did. But I wasn't connecting the politics with it because I didn't really understand politics. I didn't have a civics class. It was confusing, and I think that that's intentional. And then my life changed when 9/11 hit, and when I saw, and I was in New York at the time, when I
Mm.
saw those towers fall in New York City,
Yeah.
and then I saw the President of the United States reading My Pet Goat, I think it was My Pet Goat, for 7 minutes. I
Mm.
said, there's no way I'm not going to vote again. So
Yeah.
that activated me. So sometimes when I'm on the radio or when I'm public speaking or whatever the case may be, I try to look for a thing that will activate somebody. And I can recall seeing Michael Moore's documentary Fahrenheit 9/11, and
Oh,
that activated me even more. Like, wait a minute, I'm sitting back thinking that I don't do politics, but as I always say now, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. You know what I mean? So, but I'm also, I try to not shame unless you're being like rude and trifling.
yeah.
But for someone who doesn't understand it or doesn't get it and they're asking questions, let's engage, let's talk it up, let's dialogue, right? Because I think it's like I said, it's intentional to not know how these things work. So if you don't know how they work, then it's easier for the puppet master to pull all the strings. I
Mm-hmm.
want us to be the strings. I
Hmm.
want us to have autonomy and control. I don't want anybody to be poor or hungry or don't have dental care, right?
Right.
So, but when I was younger, no, I was not into that at all. But I was going to like, I was going to, I guess I was civically engaged. I was going to protests,
Hmm.
and I was really into radical thought, but not into the politics, not realizing that it's all interconnected.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
all interconnected. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I could recall, and so do you feel like the way you were brought up, the way that you came into this work, is that why you find yourself to be somebody who I consider you to be very, what's the word? Very kind to younger groups. And I feel like whether you're interviewing a great like a Patti LaBelle or talking to a college student, like your level of respect and humanity and dignity is the same that you provide them. Is it because of your background? Because you were somebody who wasn't really deep into politics, so you could understand why these kids may not feel the same way about the political system now, and maybe through your work, you can kind of guide them in the direction you feel they should be going in?
Oh yeah, I could totally relate to that. I can relate to it. I can relate to not understanding how a bill becomes a law, not understanding the House of Representatives, not understanding the US Senate, not knowing history. And also too, another thing that activated me is when I didn't go to college until my mid 20s. And
Mm-hmm.
my first course was an intro to African American studies.
Yeah.
And so when I saw people, I wasn't into history, I wasn't into journalism. So when I saw people that look like me, journalists that look like me, or historians who look like me,
Mm-hmm.
that really changed my life. I had
Mm.
no interest in learning about Marie Antoinette, and I'm not saying those things aren't valuable,
Yeah.
but European countries or leaving out huge chunks of the American Revolution, seeing, I heard about a Frederick Douglass, and of course, I heard about Harriet Tubman, but no
Mm-hmm.
one, you know, told me about Hiram Revels or Blanche Bruce or Ida B. Wells. That wasn't a name that I heard a lot. No
Mm-hmm.
one told me about these people, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible that all these folks existed and they are part of every movement
Yeah.
in American history." Nobody explained what Dred Scott was. Nobody explained the Compromise of 1877. My first time hearing the name Dred Scott, I will never forget it. I
Mm.
was watching The Real World with
Wow.
Kevin Powell,
Uh-huh.
and he mentioned Dred Scott in an argument with somebody on that show.
Wow.
I've told Kevin Powell this. I've told him
Mm-hmm.
this, how that had a huge impact on me, me seeing that as a kid in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
So there was little things being dropped on me, but then it all came together when, like I said, 9/11 activates me, and then the year after 9/11, I go back to school.
Mm.
In
Okay.
2002, that's when I enroll at Rutgers University. So yeah, I can relate. I understand. And I wanted to learn, but I didn't really know how. And then, you're young, you're trying to get by, you're trying to survive, in your late teens, early 20s, you're trying to live.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I can relate. So I try to move with kindness and understanding and try to give some facts and try and talk in a way that, I would be able to relate to. But back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, there
Yeah.
wasn't platforms like yours.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't platforms like mine. So yeah, you can't shame somebody or you're going to lose them completely.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose them. Now, if you think you know everything, if you think that you got it all figured out, that's different. For just being a chaos agent, that's different. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, yeah, I try to move with, I try to ask questions too, not just lecture. Like, well,
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel this way? Uh, why is this important to you? And what do you want? And
Mm-hmm.
let's find out what you want and see if how you show up, how that could change things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I really try and move with empathy.
Now that takes us up to today. When I think about your book, when I think about the Grift, something that I've said at the very minimum in terms of age should be required high school reading and above. And I feel like there's probably some really hardcore middle school students who could rock with it as well. But what I feel is that the way you let our ancestors speak about what was challenging in their past gives us a blueprint for what's going on today. And when I'm on the show with you on the Kane show, and I'm hearing people talk about the book and how much they love it, it's just something that I wish could be required reading for everybody in America. When we're talking about the path forward in this political climate right now, what are some of the dots that you connect in the book that connect to your life that you feel particularly younger people today could benefit from as we're trying to get more of them involved in the political process?
So one of the things, so the book, The Grift, I really wanted to answer the question, how did Black Republicans go from Frederick Douglass to Clarence Thomas, from Jackie
Mm-hmm.
Robinson to Herschel Walker?
Mm-hmm.
But the first half of the book, the first part, I really focus a lot on the Reconstruction era.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about that is that the blueprint is already there.
Right.
There were so many things those Black Republicans were doing that we could easily learn from. You know, they believed in public education for Black folks and for poor white folks. And it
Mm-hmm.
was important that they solidified that they protected that. Not everybody wanted that. They believed in an economic infrastructure post-slavery that
Yeah.
everybody could thrive for. We
Mm.
obviously still need more of that now. You
Yeah.
know, we're post recessions. We're post horrible policies, right? What does a real economic infrastructure look like? We're talking about fair wages. Don't have these corrupt contracts. Then, of course, later you'd have the building of unions.
Yeah.
And also, we can learn from this is that at the time, Black Republicans, they were being elected and held accountable in black areas. And their constituents held them accountable. When Blanche Bruce, the second black senator of the United States, when he's in Washington, D.C., getting featured in the New York Times for his wedding, he's being blasted by his constituents in Mississippi, the state that he represented. They're saying, what is he doing over there? He better come back here or we're not going to reelect him.
Yeah.
They were being held accountable. And also, someone like Frederick Douglass, he didn't believe in these degrees of goodness. He wasn't trying to empathize or understand the plight of the Southerner who wants you enslaved. He wasn't about this anecdotal goodness. And that, I think, is really important. He wasn't like, I'm going to see the other side of the former Confederacy. I'm going to see the other side of the Confederates.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't see Ida B. Wells saying that or Harriet Tubman saying that. And the ones who were saying that, even back then, there was a touch of a grift because they were getting something in return. A handful of black folks who kind of sided, or not sided, but gave a pass for Southern Democrats or former Confederates, right? There was something in return. It's nuanced because we're these are formerly enslaved people.
Yeah.
But, so you give them a bit of a pass, right? Today there is no pass. But that's a big one for me. That you have to be careful about other sides and both sides ism. That's very dangerous. And that was the grand mistake that Lincoln makes. Before Lincoln dies, before he's assassinated, he's putting in a plan called the 10% plan to forgive former Confederates.
Wow.
To forgive insurrectionists. He's putting in a plan. He's saying, hey, we'll give you pardons. 10% of your population, white men, take an oath that you accept slavery is over and you can rejoin the Union. Then when he's assassinated, Andrew Jackson continues that plan. So before Reconstruction even starts, Abraham Lincoln ruins it.
Wow.
By putting in this 10% plan to forgive these former Confederates. Now, my man Thaddeus Stevens, who represented an area of Pennsylvania, he said if you were a Confederate, you should never rejoin the Union. He actually wanted the South to be all military territories.
Yeah, yeah.
You should never be able to vote. You should never be able to own property. And Lincoln said, no, you're too crazy. And Thaddeus is like, listen, if you let them do this, they're going to regain control over the South and put in slavery by a different name. He didn't say that exactly. And that's exactly what they did. We can learn from these mistakes.
Yes.
You don't forgive insurrectionists. You don't forgive anybody that tries to overthrow democracy. The Confederacy, they were trying to overthrow democracy. You don't give them a pardon, you don't give them a pass. Ended up doing that. Then what do? As black folks, because we're in the South majority back then, we still are, but like 90% were in the South.
Right.
Black folks who were elected officials, they kicked them all out. They pushed them out of office. Violence, assassinations. That's why I kind of laugh when folks say, oh, things were so great during Reconstruction. There was hell during Reconstruction. I mean, it was an optimistic time, but it was incredibly violent and terrible, and the rise of just white violence was terrifying. But we can learn from all those things. And the great thing is, unlike Reconstruction, we have different voting blocks now. Women can vote. Black folks can vote for the most part.
Right.
Folks who are naturalized citizens can vote. Native Americans can vote. There's so much we can learn from that time. Go back and listen to what Douglass is saying and Bishop Henry McNeil Turner is saying. They're at the rooftop screaming like, what are y'all doing? What are you doing, President Grant? What are you doing, President Lincoln? And it's so funny, I always say this, in 1868, there were black folks black men who were able to vote due to the Reconstruction Acts, right? And there was 80% of black men registered to vote, 80%.
80%, wow.
Now, we had less power then and used our power more. In many ways, we have more power now and use our power less.
Wow.
We could just learn so much from that time. And that's what I hope part of what the book did. And I have a what's next chapter in the Grift. Um, there's that. And then with my next book, Burn Down Master's House, it is not only about, it's historical fiction, but it's not only about resistance. Like I said earlier, it's opposition. What does opposition look like? Maybe there are chains in your life that are binding you. Maybe there's a house in your life you need to burn down, right? So those are the things that I try and do to put out there in the hopes that, again, it will activate people before it's too late.
Do you are you getting concerned that it might be too late? Because I'm thinking about what you talked about in terms of what Lincoln did to pardon people, and they're like, I mean, Trump has not only pardoned guys, he's empowered them. You know, he's
Yeah.
brought them into the White House. I mean, look at the Laura Loomers of the world in terms of the ideas and conspiracy theories and the people he surrounds himself with. It seems like he's empowering them, while many of us in this multi-cultural voting bloc that you're talking about, some of us either feel disempowered or we're disempowering ourselves by our inaction. So it
Yeah.
seems like Trump and what he's doing is going up. And maybe from a distance, from what I'm seeing, our engagement seems to be going down. Does that give you pause? Am I wrong about that? How are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, is it too late? I don't know.
Mm,
Dr. Ome Congo, I don't know. I don't know. I hope it's not, but I don't know.
yeah.
So let's say it is too late. I think it will change, but it may not be in our lifetime. You know, you think about the end of Reconstruction in 1877, pretty much no adults who were alive in 1877 saw I mean, maybe unless they were really elderly, none of
Hmm.
them saw the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
And none of them saw what it would look like by the 1970s. You know, we had this rise of the black middle class in the 1970s. So maybe a few did. They were kids in 1877. So when
Hmm.
we've seen certain things fall apart, uh, these things fall apart and it takes generations to get it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But times are different now. Politics are different now. We have more power now.
Hmm.
I have to hope the work of John Lewis and Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph has sustained us enough where it's not too late. There's been so much work done, but I don't know. You know, I don't know. I can imagine if we were around in the 1960s, the Vietnam War, assassinations, Lyndon B. Johnson not running for another term, the protests. I could imagine at that point we thought it was too late.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know. I hope it's not. And if it is, then we have to be crafty. We have to reinvent ourselves.
Hmm.
And what does that reinvention look like? How are you preparing? I've been saying this. I've been preparing since July
Mm.
because I was concerned when Biden had his bad debate and for
Oh,
3 weeks Democrats, you know, attacked him. I
right.
was worried we weren't going to be able to come back from that. And I wanted Kamala Harris to win, and I hoped that she would win, but I wasn't sure because Democrats aren't very good at messaging. And not she, but George Clooney and Rob Reiner and all these folks babbling for 3 weeks. I think it really hurt us. I think it was hard to come back from that. Um, so you got to prepare. What
Yeah.
does that look like for you?
Hmm.
Tap into your local nonprofit, tap into your local community. Um, and my hope is with my work that I can just help people see the future through the past.
Hmm.
That's what I hope. But is it too late? I don't know. But I am afraid for people, just the like if you're listening to this right now and you're somebody who lost your job, I've had folks call into my show saying that they were getting treatment for cancer
Yeah.
and they needed their health insurance and they lost their job.
Hmm.
I know people that they were getting access to HIV/AIDS medication and now they're not going to have that anymore. I know people who are asking for loans because they've been fired because they work in a certain field. So, as I've been saying, this is going to be a tough time and there are going to be losses. But ultimately, Ida B. Wells said the way to right past wrongs is to shine the light of truth upon them. So I believe in us, and I mean all of us who believe in liberation and freedom. Like I said, I don't want anybody to suffer. I don't think anybody deserves that. Now, if you didn't see the signs and now you're whining, that does rub me the wrong way.
Sir.
But I still don't want you to suffer. I hope you wake up. But is it too late, brother? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's too late?
Nah, I just can't. I refuse to give anybody my hope, to give it away, to give it my happiness. My philosophy has always been, as a society, we've been through worse, and if our people can get through what they got through, we can get through this.
But can I add this though? This is important, and this is why I love having you on my show. You also have a really good worldview perspective. So you know the resilience, the resiliency of the Congo. You know, you've talked about movements that have happened all throughout the continent. And I think I'm glad you're reminding me of this. When you look at world history, I think that can give you some hope as well because you have other blueprints. I'm more of an American history expert, but you have other blueprints that you can look to, and you have that kind of knowledge. So you've seen countries turn around, you've seen societies turn around with a particular kind of engagement. So we got to remember that too, that we're not just in our American bubble, that other countries have done this, Black countries, Latin countries, and even under worse circumstances, and they've been able to push through. So that's why I like talking to you.
No doubt, no, and travel matters. Seeing the
Yeah.
world matters, and that kind of leads me to my last question for you. One of the things I appreciate, and I've seen you say in many of your recent speeches that I'm watching online, is that to get through this, to get to that next level, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to observe but not absorb.
Yes,
What
yes.
can you give us a little bit of more of what that means as we wrap this up and giving people some future advice going forward?
So as they've said, flood the zone.
Hmm.
As they've said, every story goes out there. When I was younger, I used to do more celebrity journalism. I didn't
Hmm.
like it that much, but I was very lucky and blessed to sit down with some great people. And I used to work with PR people. And
Hmm.
Trump is essentially a PR kind of guy. And when there's a scandal, create a new scandal. Make someone else talk about the other scandal.
Hmm.
Uh, Something's going on, stage something different going on. Whatever you got to do, flood the zone, change the narrative, change the storyline, regardless of the truth. So I've been saying we have to observe the chaos, but not absorb it.
Hmm.
If they take you down every single rabbit hole, the way somebody, whatever rabbit hole they go down,
Hmm.
then you're gonna miss when they're taking your rights away in your sleep.
Right.
I
Right.
try to cover the important things on my show. And we have fun and we laugh and we have joy and everything like that. But I try to really cover when it comes to this administration, what are the important things that are happening?
Hmm.
And there are some stories that have come up, Dr. Ome Congo, I can't even remember it. I'm like, I'm not going to talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. There's
Hmm.
no point for me to bring this up to my
Hmm.
audience.
Yep.
Like, no. What are the facts? What's going on? What can happen? What should we be concerned about? Because they want you to follow every minutia, every step.
Yeah.
They want like the paparazzi following snap it all, see all of it. It's the reality show. Tune in. I'm not going to tune into the reality show. I'm trying to get to the executive producer and see who can we get fired.
Right. I like that. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Hmm.
That's why sometimes I've been falling back doing some cable news shows. Not all, but they oftentimes just want. I feel like I'm on a housewives reunion. They
Wow.
want to argue and bicker. You're not talking about policy.
That's right. That's right.
You're not talking about history. You're not talking about how there are people hurting every single day.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried about their Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. I grew up poor as hell. I remember sitting in the government cheese line.
Mm-hmm.
I remember collecting cans,
Wow.
bags and bags of cans
Mm-hmm.
to put it in a recycle bin so it'll give you $2.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the faces on the food stamps booklet.
Yes.
I remember those days.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts my heart that any kid is going through that today. When you got a mom who's working every single day or a dad who's working every single day because they think if you're poor, you deserve to be there.
That's right. That's
You're
right.
just lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you have a better job? Why don't you get out there and pound the pavement some more? I never forget one time my mother did a job interview for Dairy Queen,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the car crying in tears, praying that she got the job. Just
Wow.
praying and praying that she got the job. Like, God, please let her get this job. And
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get it.
Oh, wow.
My mother was a high school dropout, dropped out in the eighth grade, eventually got a GED. This was the 80s. It was the
Mm-hmm.
Reagan era.
Mm-hmm.
They were cutting social services. So, man, yeah, I just want us all to be free and be happy and have some kind of joy and not get caught up in all of the chaos. They are taking your rights away in your sleep. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to go down the salacious lane and all that kind of stuff, but there's some real stuff happening. There's some real stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, 2024, that was the year of chaos. 2025, it's got to be the year of community.
That's right. That's right. Wow. I mean, you shared a story about your mom, but another thing I recall you saying about your mom is that she always drove you around the nice parts of town and told you what could be possible for
Yeah.
life in your future. And so that story stuck with me as well in terms of the hope and optimism I see for you from you as you continue to call out all of the nonsense that we see in this society. So not only am I appreciative of you, but I'm appreciative of your mom as well.
Yeah,
It's
she would put on The Glamorous Life by Sheila E.
That's what's
We
up.
would, we would drive to the wealthier areas, and she
Mhm.
would say, "I may not make it there with you, but if you work really hard and you stay in school, because I wasn't a great student when I was in school, she goes,
Mhm.
you could have this and more. Now I don't quite have that,
Yeah.
and thankfully my mother is still with us, but seeing the dream really helped,
Yeah.
really helped, and I love that Sheila E. song.
No
Without
doubt.
love, it ain't much.
That's
Without
right.
love, it ain't much.
I played that yesterday. Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
that's what joy. Where can people go if they want to learn more about you and hear more of you?
Clay Kane, ClayCane on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/Clay Kane Show. Follow me on all platforms. And once again, I thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. And I really appreciate the connectivity that so many of us have. You and I being on air together once a week, and all the folks that I work with. We're all in this collectively together. So I really thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor. Thank you so much for joining the Upstanders podcast.